Hi, welcome to the Action Speak Network. I'm Manazai. So yesterday, President Trump gave a speech at the University of Alabama. And during this speech, President Trump touched on several topics. One of the topics he insisted on was the presence of trans men in female sport. He gave a lot of explanation on why he believes men shouldn't be allowed to compete in female sports. He said this, play the clip.
They had transgender for everybody. We ended that, if you noticed, okay? But they had transgender for everybody. They said, I said, this is not working. This is not going to work. As I said before, so simple. Men playing in women's sports. Did you ever see some of the records? Did you ever see some of these boxing matches? We have to protect. These women are great athletes, but we have to protect. If you looked at the Olympics where they had transitioned people going into the boxing, where the women had boxing, and they had a great champion, a female boxer. I mean, after one punch, you walk back to the corner and said, I can't get hit like that. I've never been hit like that before. You look at all the volleyball players that have been hurt so badly with balls that are hit at levels that they've never seen before. But the greatest is like weightlifting. You ever see the weightlifting? Where they have a record that wasn't broken in 18 years? And they have, should I imitate it? My wife gets very upset when I do this. She said, darling, it's not presidential. I said, yeah, but people like it. Should I do it or not? All right, I'm in trouble when I get home, but that's okay. What the hell? I've been in lots of trouble before. But no, you look at the weightlifting where 18 years it stands, and they have this young woman, and her parents are right where you are in the front row, and they're so proud of her, and it's like 209 pounds, and she's going to lift that. The record stood for 18, think of it, 18 years, and they put an eighth of an ounce here, and an eighth of an ounce here, little bit, and she's going to do it. Mom, I love you. I'm going to do it for you, Mom. And she goes, and she lifts, and she gets it, and Mom, I'm going to do it, Mom. Can't do it. And then a guy comes along, or a gal, or whatever. A transitioned person comes along. And he was a failed weightlifter as a man, but he comes along, 206 pounds. They put the little thing on, and he goes, boom, boom. And breaks the record like by 119 pounds. That's not right. The other one is the swimming. You've heard me talk about it. Great swimmers, and they rose to the top. Women swimmers, and they grew up together. And they're Olympic class swimmers, and they're qualifying for some big tournament. And now the race is getting ready to start, the big race, and one young lady, she was going to set the record. She fought all her life to set the record. She has to win it by one ninth of a second. Think of that, 1/9. I don't like those odds, 1/9 of a second, right? But she looks to the left and she sees all the friends that she grew up with down in California, from all over the country. They're all the best swimmers. Then she looks to the right and she sees the same thing, but there's a person next to her who's a giant. And she looks and she, oh my God, who is that? I don't recognize that person. That was a person that transitioned, and he had the wingspan of Wilt the Still Chamberlain, if anybody knows what. And as you know what happened, she was very, very badly injured in that meet, because he went by her so fast that she was windburned. They had to take her out. She got serious windburn. He flew back and forth, and she didn't know what, but she got the hell knocked out of her, knowing that I'm only kidding. She wasn't windburned. She was just beaten by a lot. Or the race, did you see the race where they had the best female runners, and they had a guy who was a decent runner, a long distance race? And he won by 5 hours and 19 seconds. Normally you win by like 12 seconds, 2 seconds, a quarter of a second. He won by 5 hours and 19 seconds. It's crazy. And, you know, honestly, it's demeaning for women, very demeaning. These are great athletes. It's very demeaning, and we're going to protect women. We're going to protect women. We're going to protect everybody.
So during this same speech, President Trump also talked about Harvard University, and he called for the university to lose the tax exemption status that they are having for several years now. He said this, play the clip.
It is clear to see the next chapter of the American story will not be written by the Harvard Crimson. It will be written by you, the Crimson Tide. If you look at what's going on, you know, they get their $5 billion a year. That is not going to be so forthcoming.
So after the firing of Michael Waltz from the position of National Security Advisor and his appointment as the U.S. ambassador to the UN, there were several reactions. One of the reactions was that of the congressman from Florida, Byron Donald, who said this, play the clip.
Obviously the news came pretty fast. I just heard it 5 minutes ago, so still a little stunned by it. Listen, I've got a chance to serve with Mike. He's a friend, a good member of Congress up here. It's unfortunate things didn't work out, but I know that Mike will bounce back and he'll land on his feet.
Another reaction came from David Ignatius, the Washington Post columnist, who had this reaction about the firing of Michael Waltz. Play the clip.
What's your sense of what exactly happened here?
So, Willie, I'd say, first of all, Waltz is the fall guy for what we call Signalgate. He originated the chat. It seems he had Jeffrey Goldberg, our Atlantic friend, on his contact list, and somehow he got in that chat. So that's a part of this. There have been rumors for many weeks that the White House was interviewing for a successor to Waltz as National Security Advisor. A lot of people, it said, didn't want the job, were nervous about it. I reported this morning that beneath the obvious explanation of Signalgate, you see all the cross currents, ideological, personality, other factors beneath Trump. Trump is really the only solid pole in his administration. Beneath him, I said there are really three discernible groups. One is around J.D. Vance. We'd call them the kind of MAGA believers, strongly supported by Trump's own son, Donald Trump Jr., is playing a role in this administration, very much like Jared Kushner and his wife Ivanka, Trump's daughter, played in the first Trump term. There's another group that I'd say Waltz was part of, the traditional national security Republicans, and then there's a third fascinating group, the big business billionaires, the oligarchs, Elon Musk, obviously, Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary. So there is this ferment underneath Trump, and we saw a bit of it, I think, in yesterday's action. Waltz will be away from the White House, where there wasn't good chemistry between him and Trump. And interestingly, Marco Rubio, who used to be seen as on the outs, has managed to charm his way into Trump's inner circle, has been very supportive. You never see Marco Rubio say anything but, great job, Mr. President. He's now going to be at Trump's side as the temporary national security advisor. So, you know, Trump world spins underneath, but you must, recognize that there is one person making policy. Don't know what it is from day to day sometimes, but that's Donald Trump.
John Bolton also reacted to the appointment of Michael Waltz as new U.S. ambassador to the UN and his removal from the position of National Security Advisor. John Bolton's reaction is very interesting because he is one of the few Americans that have been privileged to hold the two positions, that of National Security Advisor under President Trump and later on that of U.S. Ambassador to the UN. He had this to say. Play the clip.
For Ambassador, good to have you on. Obviously, representing the U.S. in the UN is an important job. Do you believe Vice President Vance, his claim that Mike Waltz is leaving his job not because of the signal scandal, but because the White House wanted to promote him?
Of course not. I mean, I think it really just shows how little about national security J.D. Vance knows. If you took 100 people anywhere in this country who know anything about national security, Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever, and asked them objectively, do you think National Security Advisor or UN Ambassador is the more important job? I will bet a small amount. I'll bet a large amount of money that 90 out of 100, if not 99 out of 100, would say national security advisor is the more important job.
By the way, you have a lot of
very
credibility
interesting
on
what
this,
Caitlin-
given that you've held both of these positions. So in your opinion, having been the U.S. ambassador to the UN, you say the national security advisor is a more important job.
I don't think there's any question about it. I love being UN ambassador. Don't get me wrong, but it doesn't compare.
Another reaction came from Anthony Scaramucci, who was a former communication director at President Trump's White House during his first term. He had this reaction. Play the clip.
Now, and Anthony, we booked you because you wrote on Twitter this morning after this was reported. You said Waltz last 9.2 Scaramucci's. You then did correct it. To be fair, you said 9.18 Scaramucci's. Are you surprised that he made it to 9.18 Scaramucci's, as you have mathematically deduced here?
You said 9 earlier today to Dana Bash. I sort of feel like we have to be generous to these people.
And you corrected me.
Yeah, so let's round up. But listen, he should have been fired, 4 Scaramucci's ago. This is a very binary thing. You shouldn't be using Signal. Even the president himself said not to use it. He continues to use it, and it's very binary. And so, but I think the president has basically told people he doesn't want to fire people. He doesn't want scalps. He's fighting a great culture war. He's sort of like the General Napoleon of the culture war, sees the battlefield ahead. He doesn't want the liberal mainstream media, all the stuff that he says, to get scalps of people in his administration. And so this is the main reason why Waltz hasn't left the administration. He was fired from that job. And even though the vice president says he wasn't demoted, he was demoted. But I think it's a tell here. The president doesn't want to let him go because he doesn't want to do what he did in his first administration, fire his first national security advisor after 22 or 23 days. I don't think he had any problem firing me. By the way, when he fired me at like 4 o'clock, he sent out a tweet saying it was a fantastic day in the White House. So I don't think he had any problem firing me. But I think in general, he doesn't want to fire people right now. I think he's, and even if they act like amateurs or they do really silly things like put our battle plans out on things like WhatsApp, he's not going to fire them because he thinks it's part of the culture war.
I don't think this would happen here. We don't have any reporting that it would. But do you believe part of that is to stem people from writing books? I mean, I was watching John Bolton earlier talking to Anderson. He wrote a book when he was leaving the West Wing that Trump got in a huge fight with him about, a legal battle. Do you think that has anything to do with it?
Listen, again, this is just my gut. I don't. I think it's more related to it's us versus them. They're coming for us. They want our scalps. If you've come to work for me, I'm going to protect you. And I think that he's also, listen, he probably offered that UN job to a number of different people that didn't take it. He's got a group of people. If you see the cabinet meetings, you guys left this out. Rubio gets like an A+ on the flattering. I mean, the level of sycophancy coming from Rubio, I think if he continues this, he'll end up with like 6 or 7 more jobs before this is over. So they sit around in there and they chant good things to the president. And I've been with the president where he laughs at these people. So, they're chanting to him and they think they're currying favor with him, but he's down deep. He's laughing at them. So, Rubio's there now. He gets the extra job. Waltz is out. But remember, there was also a fight between Waltz and Vance related to Iran. Don't forget that part of the story. The one was more hawkish. The other one was trying to take a more reticent approach. And I think that contributed to
The Vice President J.D. Vance also reacted to the removal of Michael Waltz as National Security Advisor, his appointment as U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. The Vice President J.D. Vance had this to say. Play the clip.
Breaking news.
Yeah.
Why was Mike Waltz let go?
So he wasn't let go. He is being made ambassador to the United Nations, which, of course, is a Senate-confirmed position. I think you can make a good argument that it's a promotion. But we brought Mike on to do some serious reforms of the National Security Council. He has done that. I like Mike. I think he's a great guy. He's got the trust of both me and the president. But we also thought that he'd make a better UN ambassador as we get beyond this stage of the reforms that we've made to the National Security Council. You saw the president announce that Marco Rubio is going to step in as interim leader of the National Security Council. So I think the media wants to frame this as a firing. Donald Trump has fired a lot of people. He doesn't give them Senate-confirmed appointments afterwards. What he thinks is that Mike Waltz is going to better serve the administration, most importantly, the American people in that role, and I happen to agree with him.
But was it a direct result of the Signal chat? I mean, you were on that chat, and we saw the fallout from it. Is this a result of that?
No, it's not, Brett. I mean, look, what we came into the administration, and of course the president in his first term had some serious issues with the National Security Council. He said, Mike, you need to go in here, fire, frankly, a lot of people who aren't loyal to my agenda, who we think aren't even loyal to the American people, bring in the right collection of people to actually make the National Security Council function. And Mike has done that. And now it's time for Mike to do something else because he's done the job that I think he was asked to do. If the president wanted to fire him over the Signal thing, which, by the way, was a total nothing burger of a story, he would have just done it. But he actually decided it's better for Mike to be in this new role. He's given Mike the new role. That's it.
There was a very interesting exchange yesterday between the Vice President J.D. Vance and Greg Baer, journalist from Fox News. And during this exchange, the journalist asked Vice President Vance about the situation in Yemen in respect to the Houthis that have been bombed now for more than 48 days consecutively by the U.S. military. And the J.D. Vance, the vice president, had this to say. Play the clip.
But you asked about the Houthi campaign. I mean, I think, we're already seeing signs that the Houthis are saying no mas. They've been bombed. They've recognized that there are serious consequences to firing on American and other ships. And I actually think we're in a good place for the Houthis to stop attacking civilian vessels, to go back to doing whatever it is they were doing before they were attacking civilian vessels. And I think that if that were happening, then this bombing campaign would be over the next day.
You hear the criticism, though, from libertarians, from the left, that this is the new Vietnam. This is 48 days of bombing. People in the middle of the country may not know that we're in the middle of a hot war with Yemen. What do you say to that?
Well, not with Yemen, with a terrorist organization
Inside
that has been firing on American ships. And I think that people, want to compare this to Vietnam. Come on. I think that the president has made it very clear that one of his core national security priorities is that if you load stuff onto a ship and you send it to the United States, we want to make sure that it shows up without the sailors getting killed, without the ship being destroyed. That is an objective that we're going to pursue forcefully if we have to.
Yesterday on Fox News, while talking about the situation and the negotiation for the peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia and the role of the United States, one of the anchors at Fox News wasn't happy with one of the answers given by the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, to a reporter. The anchor expressed his frustration to the answer given by the Secretary of State, and the moment was very interesting. Play the clip.
And now you could use equity in the deal to buy weapons from the Pentagon. Here's Secretary of State Marco Rubio on what could be next.
We've got so many, and I would argue even more important issues going on around the world. Not that a war in Ukraine is not important, but I would say what's happening with China is more important in the long term for the future of the world. Obviously, Iran's nuclear ambition, all these other things that we have going on. So at some point in time, it either has to be something that can happen or we'll need to move on. That'll be a decision the president will have to make.
I don't love that tone. I want to find a resolve. Moving on, I just think it's in our national interest to find a way to do something.
So yesterday, Tom Homan, the border czar of the Trump administration, was on Fox News where he was asked about the situation with Abero Garcia. The man was deported to a prison in El Salvador. And the journalist asked him that the New York Times has reported that the Trump administration reached out to the El Salvador government to see the possibility of returning Abero Garcia back to the United States. But that the president of El Salvador said that the man can't be sent back to the U.S. because he is a citizen of El Salvador and he is at home. So the answer was no. And Tom Homan had this to say. Play the clip.
So the administration made inquiries of Bukele about Abrego Garcia to get him out. Bukele said no. Is that the end of it?
I mean, are we supposed to go into a sovereign nation and kidnap one of their nationals? I mean, Bukele's made it clear he's a citizen, national El Salvador. And for all the leftists saying that he was erroneously deported to El Salvador, they got to remember the withholding order was about fearing a gang in El Salvador, but that gang no longer exists. So the justification for that withholding order is gone. It's no longer exists. Plus, he's now designated a terrorist. And I watched some of the folks speaking before I came on, when they talk. Look, for all these congressmen to stand up and say we didn't give due process, let me remind them. They wrote the Alien Enemies Act. They enacted the Alien Enemies Act. Congress did. We're simply enforcing the law that's in federal statute that they created, that a president signed. We're not making this up. We're enforcing laws that Congress enacts, and that's exactly what we're going to continue to do.
Well, I imagine that you could quiet a lot of this criticism by facilitating his return to the United States. But at the same time, you would probably open up another big can of worms that if Democrats felt like they could pressure you into bringing him back, then they could pressure you into doing a lot of other things. And Kayleigh McGee-White actually told me in a conversation we had offline that she believes that the bigger picture here for Democrats is if they could make it this difficult for you to deport somebody who's suspected to be a gang member, somebody who had orders of protection against him, then how are you ever going to deport non-criminal illegal aliens?
Look, we knew day one. I knew the day one of the inauguration that we're going to be fighting the courts, we're going to be fighting the Democrats, we're going to be fighting the NGOs, the Open Board of Activists. We knew the fight was coming, and we're going to take that fight on. But you know one thing I know that all they don't, that all the other ones, the ones that are yelling about this, I've seen in 40 years what TDA and MS-13 are capable of. I've seen the horrific things they have done, not only to American citizens, but aliens that live here. I've seen their capability. They are animals, and I can't even compare it to animals. Animals kill to survive. MS-13 and TDA kill for pleasure, and to put fear in not only the American community, they put fear in the immigrant community. That's who they attack the most, the migrant community. So you know what? I stand with President Trump. This man's home. He's where he should be.
There you have it. On the Action Speak Network, we give you the information as it is. Our own personal opinion, we keep them for ourselves. You have your own opinions and your thoughts, please leave them in the comment section. We are going to check them out. I'm going to check them out. Please hit subscribe. Let's get to 1,000. I'm out.